Hi everybody and welcome back to my channel. My name is Amelia and here on this channel we talk about writing, journaling, and productivity to help you curate a life that you love. So for today's video I wanted to talk about a few things that I'm really passionate about and I feel like a lot of people actually really enjoy, and you may not know all of these like personality quizzes. That's basically what we're talking about. We're talking about personality quizzes. And I think that just knowing where you stand within these certain personality quizzes kind of helps you understand who you are as a person and how to progress through life. I am a huge stickler for personal development, and I firmly believe that knowing how you learn things, how you receive and give love, how you interact with others is so valuable for your journey, because not everybody experiences life the same way as another person, and not everybody can use different aspects of personal development in order to become better at personal growth. I don't know if any of that made sense. Basically, people have different styles in learning and communicating and in growing, and because we're all different, we have to understand that the way that we do things is going to have to change as well. That's the goal for today, and I'm just gonna go ahead and hop into it. So grab a seat, well, you're probably already sitting, something to drink, and just enjoy this video because it's going to be all about you. Alright, so the first personality test that I think is highly valuable for people to know about themselves is the Enneagram test. So if you haven't heard of the Enneagram test before, and even if you have but you may not know what it is, it's essentially a test that tells you what kind of path in life you may have in regards to your personality and the way that you view the world. It's often a test used for students and people in the workplace because it helps you understand how you gather information and how you act upon things that you desire or move forward with your career or productivity, stuff like that. According to Wikipedia, the Enneagram personality, or simply the Enneagram test, is a model of the human psyche which is principally understood and taught as a typology of 9 interconnected personality types. Contemporary Enneagram theories are principally derived from the teachings of the Bolivian psycho-spiritual teacher Oscar Ichazo. I apologize if I say that wrong. And if you're interested on what this diagram looks like, I will go ahead and put one up on the screen, and I'm going to cover the 9 different types really quick. So the first one is called the reformer. The second one is the helper. 3 is the achiever. 4, the individualist. 5, the investigator. 6, the loyalist. 7, the enthusiast. 8, the challenger. And 9, the peacemaker. And while these titles can change slightly, the meanings behind them stay the same, and each type has a different personality associated with it. For example, my Enneagram type is a type 3, and type 3s are known for being very ambitious, very goal-oriented, and very driven. I have also taken the test a few times and gotten type 2, which is the helper. They tend to be more giving, contributing, and offer help to others, more or less. And these types characterize parts of your personality, or even just the overarching type of personality that you may have, and you can use this as a resource to discover all sorts of things. You can figure out what kind of self-care would benefit you most, how to make your goals more definitive and work for you, how to move forward in your career and better yourself. There's so many different ways to utilize it, and it's why I think it's one of the most important personality types to find out about yourself. To go into more detail about each type, I'm going to give a few keywords that would represent this type, but no matter what, I highly recommend that you check out a personality test for the Enneagram in order to figure out what yours is. While you can kind of base it off of words, the things that you value and the things that you are don't always align. And so I highly recommend that you take that personality test, and I will leave a link in the description box below of the one that I deem as my favorite. But if we're going to start, we have the reformer, who is principled, purposeful, self-controlled, and perfectionistic. The helper would be demonstrative, generous, people-pleasing, and possessive. Type 3, adaptable, excelling, driven, and image-conscious. Type 4, dramatic, expressive, self-absorbed, and temperamental. Type 5, perceptive, innovative, secretive, and isolated. The loyalist, engaging, responsible, anxious, and suspicious. The enthusiast, type 7. Spontaneous, versatile, distractible, and scattered. Type 8. Self-confident, decisive, willful, and confrontational. And type 9. Receptive, reassuring, agreeable, and complacent. Now what you'll notice is that with those keywords placed with those types, you can see 2 positive and 2 negative, or at least a few of them are neutral. But the idea is that each type has its benefits and has its drawbacks, but it's who you are as a person, and you can categorize people pretty much in any one of those 9 different types. Something else to point out is that some people like to say that you are a type of one and then you are a wing of another. So for me, I am a type 3 with a wing 2, and that just means that I tend to lean close to that number aside from other numbers. And so you have like your main personality and then like whatever's below it. And so everybody's different, and of course each one has its perks and its drawbacks, but I highly encourage that you look into this and learn more about it. Personally, I don't know much about it. In all honesty, it's something that I also need to do more research on. So this is what I have, and I hope that that helps a little bit and encourages you to go find your Enneagram. Okay, so moving on to the next personality type or quiz that I think is super important for you to know about yourself, and that is the Myers-Briggs personality test, or the MBTI, which it is commonly known as. When it comes to MBTI, there are essentially 16 different personalities made up of a few different characters. There are 8 different letters that you rearrange them and you get those 16 personalities. And according to Wikipedia, the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator is an introspective self-report questionnaire indicating differing psychological preferences and how people perceive the world and make decisions. Essentially, it's a really broad overview of your entire personality, and it's less associated with career and how you act and more of like who you are as a person, if that makes any sense. On the one hand, the Enneagram, for example, can kind of show you your direction in life, but the Myers-Briggs test gives you a different perspective and shows you who you are as a person and who you may always be. I took the Myers-Briggs test back in, 2014, 2015, and I discovered that my letters are INFJ. And I will tell you what those mean in a few seconds, but I wanted to point out something that's very interesting. I took that test back in 2014, and I've taken it multiple times since, and every single time I get those letters, INFJ. So I have discovered that when it comes to the Myers-Briggs personality test, you rarely, if ever, change from that personality. To cover what these letters mean, we'll look at each section one letter at a time, because my letters are only half of what they could have been. So we'll start with the first letter. So when it comes to Myers-Briggs, the first thing that they look into is whether you are an introvert or an extrovert. So introverts are people who gain energy by being alone, and extroverts gain more energy by being with people. And that's the best way to put it. So there are 2 variations for the second letter, of course, but the letter that I have is an N, and the alternative letter that it could have been would be an S. N stands for intuition, and S stands for sensing. These letters represent the way that you gather information and perceive the world. It's the way that you experience things with your perspective and then take it in and process it. For me, it's an N, which is intuition, and it simply means that the way I experience the world is intuitively. I make judgments based on pattern and not obvious cues, I guess is the way to put that. Sensing types, on the other hand, tend to take concrete examples from life and process things that way. And you can kind of think of it in simplistic terms as, say, seeing that I have artwork on the back of the wall. If you're a sensor, you would just see that I have artwork and you can conclude I may be an artist. However, an intuitive person may see the artwork and they may gather a different meaning, or they'll tend to make intuitive guesses that may or may not be accurate, where a sensing person would focus more on facts and what is available and make a more accurate guess, I would say, but they might miss out on some hidden meanings. The next 2 letters are F and T. F stands for feeling and T stands for thinking, and as you may guess, this divides the world between feelers and thinkers, people who use their heart or people who use their head. And that is pretty much what it is. It's the way that you make decisions. For me, I am an F, which means I tend to make decisions based on how I feel rather than on what I think. The final letters are J and P. J stands for judging and P stands for perceiving. People who fall in the judging category tend to be more organized and conscientious, while people who are in the P category tend to be more spontaneous and kind of act on things at the spur of the moment, at the drop of a hat. Now, there's more to this test than just the letters, and again, each personality has a different title and has a different function, I guess, in life. Each one has a broad overview of what the person is like, how they would live, and what careers would be best for them. It's a really in-depth overview to your life. And so I highly recommend that you take the test, find out your letters, and then look into it after that. And I'll put a link in the description box below. Once you figure out your MBTI type, it makes it a lot easier to kind of understand yourself as a person and how you react and respond to the world. Alright, so this next one is a bit different. While a lot of people can respect the Enneagram and the MBTI test because they are backed by psychology and science, there are many people who do not respect this next one. However, I do think it is pretty interesting and I value it as a person, but that is a personal opinion and that's okay. So the next one is knowing your astrological birth chart. The world is kind of split half and half. There are people who value astrology and there are people who think it's kind of silly. No matter where you fall, that's okay. You just pick one and go with it. But I do think it's interesting to know your astrological birth chart because it says a lot about you as a person, and I'm going to go into why I think so, but again, if you don't really like astrology, you can just skip to the next one. I have all the timestamps listed down below, so feel free to skip it if you want to. I think that knowing your astrological birth chart helps you understand many things about yourself. I don't know a ton about astrology, but I have been into it since I was in the 7th grade. My sun sign is a Scorpio, for example, and that your sun sign tends to be your ego, it tends to be the overall person that you are. But when it comes to the rest of the birth chart, things get a little more interesting, and this is where I really value it. So I use an app called CoStar, and it is a free app where you can put in your date of birth and time of birth. Knowing the time is very important as the planets shift between the minutes, so it's really important to know when you were born. And if you don't know the exact time, that's okay. Put in your best guess or as close as you can to what you think the actual time was. Once you put in this information, you can use CoStar to find out the rest of your birth chart, and it will tell you what your moon is, what your ascending is, your Venus, your Mercury, your Mars, Jupiter, all of that. Sorry, I had to pull up the app. Each planet represents a different aspect of who you are as a person and gives you more insight on how you respond to things and how you interact with the world. Birth charts tend to be very personal, and I won't give away all of mine, but I will say what some of these other planets and moon, what they mean. So the moon, it tends to be your emotions and how you emotionally react to things. Mercury, on the other hand, is about communication. Mars represents how you assert yourself and your overall energy. Venus represents how you interact in love, and of course there are many more planets, so there are many other meanings. Knowing your zodiac sign is great, and yes, you can do daily horoscopes based off of your sun sign, but knowing the rest of it is even more interesting, especially when it comes to patterns in the astrological sky, which if I were to get into this, it would make this video like 5-10 hours long. I have no idea. If you want more information on astrology, I highly recommend Know the Zodiac, which is on Instagram. I actually found it through their founder, whose name is Dulcevia. I am so sorry, I can't pronounce her name. But she runs another Instagram account called Scorpio Mystique, which I found years ago, and I absolutely love her. Her content is amazing, and she too has an app called KTZ, Know the Zodiac, and I highly recommend that you check that out to see just daily scopes, weekly scopes, or even use her full-on birth chart readings. I think that she's an amazing person and has a lot of content there that you can look at. Okay, so moving forward, the next thing that I think that you need to know about yourself is your love language. Love language, honestly, is not just dedicated to a romantic relationship between you and another partner. It is also a way that you can show yourself appreciation, and it kind of reflects how you interact with other people, just relationships in general. This really should be called your relationship language, but we'll call it love language because it sounds good too. There are 5 different types of love languages, and I've mentioned them before in a few blog posts. Again, I can link a lot of this stuff down below, but if you want the simplistic rundown, the 5 different types of love languages are physical affection, quality time, words of affirmation, acts of service, and gift giving. These 5 different love languages are a way of representing how you give and receive love. For now, I want you to think of it of how you receive love. Out of these 5 different things, which one would you personally prefer? Now, it's also important to know that the way that you give love and the way that you receive it is not always the same. Typically, we give love the way that we would have wanted it. So for me, my love language is quality time. So I tend to give quality time to people as my act of love because I give it the way I receive it, but that's not always the way it works. Knowing your love language is good not only for you and your partner, because if you two of you know your love languages, there are so many ways that you can do activities together that work. I'll use me and my partner for example. Matt is a physical affection love language, and so one way that we incorporate our 2 love languages is by going on hikes, going rock climbing, bowling, just doing physical activities, but we also spend a lot of time talking and being together because that is what I enjoy. So we do things like that in order for both of us to feel very loved in that moment. And of course, we appeal to each other's love languages separately, but that's kind of the way that we incorporate the 2. And I think that knowing you and your partner's love languages helps the both of you to kind of better understand each other and realize how you can work together to enhance your relationship. But also knowing your love languages is good for your self-love because it shows you how to love yourself. And I have a few graphics that I can include down below, or just my blog post. I made a blog post on Valentine's Day with exactly this, so definitely check that out if you are interested on how you can show yourself some love using your love language. Okay, so this next one is also pretty interesting, and that is knowing your learning style. And I have so many thoughts about learning styles. I have recently been talking to my partner about this because I have noticed that he struggles with the traditional education system, which is reading and writing oriented and sometimes logic oriented, depending on whether you're taking a STEM course or whether you're taking a liberal arts course. But depending on what you're taking, it's usually one of those 2 things. But there's not a lot of auditory or verbal or spatial or even kinesthetic learning opportunities within the traditional school system, which makes it harder for those learners. So if you've ever been bad at school, it could just be that school never catered to your learning style. And you know what? That's on them. That's their fault. You'll often see articles about 4 different learning styles or 5, but I really loved this one take by theasianschool.net. I will put their blog post down in the description below because I like that they included 10 different learning styles because I do think that there are more than just 4. And I'm going to go ahead and list the 10 different learning styles on the screen. So we have kinesthetic learners, reading and writing learners, visual or spatial learners, auditory learners, natural learners, linguistic learners, interpersonal learners, intrapersonal learners, logic mathematical learners, musical or rhythmic learners, and I think that's everything. So those are the different types. Again, I'll put those in the description below as well, but I highly recommend that you look up that article to learn more about it. As you might expect, these learning styles are pretty straightforward. The only ones that I think need a little bit of discussion are the interpersonal, intrapersonal, and natural learners. I think the rest of it can kind of be self-explanatory, and if you want more information on that, you can look below, and I'll also tell you my learning style in a few seconds. So the first one that I want to talk about is interpersonal learners, which are people who learn better in groups. Again, the school setting tends to be more interpersonal and less intrapersonal, unless you hit inter-college and have a pandemic, because now everybody has to be an intrapersonal learner, pretty much. But the interpersonal learners are, again, people who learn better in groups. Intrapersonal learners are people who learn better on their own rather than being in a group setting. Another one that needs to be talked about, I think, is natural learners, which is something that theasianschool.net included in their blog post, and I thought it was kind of interesting. I think of it as people who can use multiple learning styles and gather information and retain it no matter how it's taught. And I would put myself as a natural learner. I don't really struggle to learn if the learning style changes. Obviously, the school setting worked really well for me. I think personally, I lean towards reading and writing as my learning style, and I find that that is most beneficial to me, but I can also learn logically or spatially or kinesthetically. But that's why I thought that was interesting, because I think putting natural learners in there is just, again, people who don't have to have a preference, that anything can help them retain information. But obviously that's not the majority of people, and I think knowing your personal learning style can be revolutionary for school or any education setting at all. But knowing your learning style will change everything, and I definitely recommend that you look down in that article below and try to get a feel of what your learning style may be, and then go back and do a little bit more research on yours specifically to see how you can better teach yourself topics that the traditional school system may not be teaching you properly because of your learning style. Alright, so that was a hefty, very chatty talk for today. I think we're good. I think we've covered everything. So anyway, thank you for watching today's video. If you like it, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Don't forget to let me know what your styles are. I'll put a comment too, so that way we can start a discussion. I'm really interested to see what tends to be the most common for learning styles, love languages, everything. So be sure to let me know what your results are in the comments below. And with that, I think we are good. So yeah.